Hello, welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and later on our podcast channel. I'm joined by Ryder, who's back in his hotel after watching Newcastle lose to Chelsea down at Stamford Bridge, 2-0 to Chelsea. And Lee, it was more of the Newcastle we'd seen in recent weeks before the upturn in form. Just sum up your view on what you witnessed tonight.
Yeah, it was pretty disappointing, to be totally honest. I thought they paid Chelsea far too much respect in the first half and just let them do exactly what they wanted to do. There seemed to be a big issue with Emil Kraft and the position Steve Bruce wanted him to play. Steve Bruce obviously wasn't happy with Kraft being too narrow in the defence, and I think he wanted him to try and push Werner out a little bit further to the touchline. That didn't materialise, and it resulted in about 7 or 8 complaints from the sideline to Kraft. And at the end of the day, that was where the damage was done down that side. And for Newcastle now, looking at that second half, they came out with a little bit more fight, a little bit more, oomph about them. But then, they just didn't have enough to get anywhere near the goal as far as Chelsea were concerned. And really, by that point, Chelsea were in full control, weren't they? And they had the game in the bag, the points in the bag, and it looked very easy for them.
It did, and you mentioned there they came out in the second half with a bit more oomph, but it was interesting and listening to Jamal Lascelles over on Sky Sports, and he said, we need to realise we shouldn't need to go 1 or 2 down to get going. And that's very much the case and has been all season. And I think it plays into what many fans are saying on social media, that get beat off Chelsea. They've got some good players and, they're on a good run of form, but it's just the manner in which they've been beaten tonight again.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of fight and talk from the captain after the game. I think, to be fair, he tried to make his presence felt in that game, but certainly the tackle on Abraham. But look, you're going to need more than that with Chelsea. It just seemed so comfortable for them. And as I say, they were just doing everything that they wanted to do, particularly down that left-hand side. And I just think that really, games like this, Rafa Benitez, he set up, he parked the bus. And sometimes he didn't just do that to try and get a point from the game. He did it to try and protect the goal difference as well. And today only lost 2-0 in the end, but could have been a lot more. It was a risk, and I just think Newcastle just weren't at it. I don't know whether it's the late kickoff or the travel down to London, whatever it was. It just didn't look good out there tonight, and it was really disappointing.
They had 9 days to prepare for this game. Chelsea had played in the FA Cup against Barnsley, but it was Newcastle who looked lethargic and lacklustre. I mean, what do you put that down to?
Well, I think there was a few changes made by Tuchel, the Chelsea boss, but he's got so much quality to pick from. But you've got to come up with a game plan that's going to be able to absorb that pressure. And Newcastle, they were lucky to only be 2-0 down at half time. Let's be totally honest. They got nowhere near the Chelsea goal. They didn't look a threat. And yeah, I just felt that towels got thrown in a little bit towards the end of that first half. Second half, as I say, much better. But by that point, it's easy to come out and do that in the second half. The 2-0 down, the threat had gone for Chelsea. And realistically, Chelsea could have gone up the gears a little bit in the second half if they'd have wanted. If Newcastle had pulled a goal back, I'm sure they could have, gone up the gears, as I say, and added to the scoreline.
It was Giroud and then Werner that got the goals for Chelsea in the first half. Do you think they were preventable, Lee? I mean, Darlow pushed one out, pushed it out into Giroud's path, but the ball shouldn't probably have gotten into that stage anyway. And then Werner found his first goal since November, came from a corner, and it was kind of pinball in the box. Poor defending, didn't manage to get it clear. Were the goals preventable, do you think?
Well, certainly the second goal from the corner, definitely preventable. The first one, Carl Darlow's been so great this season. You can't really criticising me, probably did what he thought was best. But I think the problem down that flank come from the confusion of where Kraft was supposed to be playing. Obviously, he had a different view to the manager, and I don't think he had much choice but to sit narrow, because had he sort of pushed out too far, then the damage Chelsea could have created in that space, could have been brutal. And maybe done the right thing, but it's a 2-0 defeat, the fourth bottom. Fulham have got a game in hand. Newcastle's goal difference is taking a battering. They go to Old Trafford next, and we know that gap could be closed down again before they kick a ball next. So it's doom and gloom, I'm afraid, from the capital tonight.
What was Steve Bruce like in his press conference after? I read some of the tweets he put out, and his comments will be on our website in due course. But he seemed to be suggesting there's still a lot more. There's still other teams in this relegation fight, but it is Newcastle, who look the most likely, in my opinion, to be dragged into it.
Yeah, they're sinking like a stone at the moment. That's what the worry is. And I know Southampton have lost consecutive games, but when we really analyse the last 10 or 11 weeks, Newcastle are in relegation form. If you study the Premier League form table, they're already in the relegation zone. I got a little bit confused on the video I'd done straight after the game and said Newcastle are in the relegation zone. They're not quite there yet, but in terms of form, they are, and they're heading towards the real relegation zone just at the wrong time. And if you look at that fixture list, it's very tough. There's some tough games in there away from home. I'm not so much, I am worried about the big teams because the goal difference could get another battering. But the ones I'm worried about are your Burnleys away. Has this team got the character to go to Turf Moor on a cold day and get something? It's not. Look, I'm looking at this team and thinking the fight doesn't seem to be there. And yes, they hung on against Southampton, but realistically, that game against Southampton, it should have been all over before the red card. And they scraped the win in the end, and it was an important one for them, because without it, they'd be in serious trouble now. So I'm concerned. I'm deeply concerned about Newcastle at the moment.
The comment I was referring to of Steve Bruce's, and you can find out all on Lee's Twitter feed, there are 7 or 8 teams looking over their shoulder. It is always the accumulation of points. Still a long way to go. We certainly don't have enough at the moment, so we need to put a couple of wins together. Do you think, are Newcastle aware they're in quite a bit of danger, and there is that fear amongst, fans, pundits, journalists, that they are the one that are going to get caught by Fulham?
Well, I'm looking at the league table now as a speech. Let's analyse it. Who are the 7 or 8 teams? Burnley, certainly still in the relegation mire. I agree with that. Brighton, definitely in there on 26 points. Crystal Palace, 29 points. But after that, bearing in mind West Brom and Sheffield United are gone, I think Southampton will eventually get out of trouble. I know they're on a really bad run at the minute, but I think they've got enough quality to get out of it. I think Wolves will get out of it because just on the back of the season they had last year, they're on 30 points now. They only need a couple of wins. I think Leeds, until yesterday, I definitely thought, they were going to push on to safety. They're on 32 points. Again, they only need a couple of wins. Arsenal are on 34 points. They're more or less out the equation. So, no, Fulham, Newcastle, Burnley, Brighton, and maybe Palace are the teams in it. It's probably 5 teams vying for that one spot. So 7 or 8, I don't agree with that.
And he said on the BBC that they were excellent in the second half, and there were positives to take from the second half as well. And look, they were better, but as you've alluded to earlier on the show, it wasn't exactly difficult to be better in that second 45 than what they were in the first half. But what positives do you think Steve Bruce has taken from what he saw in that second half?
Well, I'm going to sit and watch it again, the second half, and watch the whole game again, to be totally honest. But as painful as that will be, and I'm going to see exactly what was so great about this second half. Obviously, I think Willock had that chance that was tipped away, and the Shelvey free kick. But other than that, were Chelsea quaking in the boots? I don't think they were. As I say, even if Newcastle had pulled a goal back, I think they could have just gone up the gears and, got another couple of goals quite easily if they needed to. They didn't in the end. Thomas Tuchel was unhappy with his team, so that shows you the standard Newcastle were up against. But overall, disappointing night at Stamford Bridge. I have to be honest, I didn't expect them to do much in this game. A point would have been, I think, we'd be celebrating that tonight because it would be fantastic, but they never looked like they were going to get it. Look at the statistics. I think they tell their own sorry story.
Penultimate question then, Lee. Obviously, Dwight Gale came in for Callum Wilson, and we all know what a massive blow Callum Wilson is, that injury to Newcastle. And he played in a similar position to what Wilson's been playing over the last couple of games, and it's worked really well. But it just didn't work tonight. And, many people wanted Gale to play, me included, from the start. I was happy to see him on the team sheet. But looking at what happened tonight in the 60 plus minutes he got, it just didn't work. And he was playing too far on the wing for me. Do you think Steve Bruce might look to maybe switch him into the middle for the next game against Manchester United, or a completely different striker starts?
It's an interesting question. The debate starts again, doesn't it, over who should start in the attack. But at the end of the day, Gale has encountered the same problems Callum Wilson's had for most of the season. Lack of service. I think Thomas Tuchel mentioned it. He was talking about a lack of precision from his team, but they got the ball in the box so much in that first half. And I think, had Callum Wilson been watching that night, he would thrive on that, to be in a team that could create so much like Chelsea did. Gale would be the same. You're only as good as the surface around you, and sadly, Gale didn't get much of it. I have to be honest, being in the empty ground, Gale was, playing like a captain in some ways in terms of encouragement, keeping the troops motivated. I don't think you can fault his effort. I really don't. I think he did everything he could, given the circumstances. Sums it up really that his main contribution was a defensive clearance at the start. So disappointing from that point of view, but overall, I think Newcastle will leave here very disappointed.
The final question, we'll just dive into your match report. And in there, you can find that on Chronicle Live. You see, we're now down to the last 14 matches, and United's top flight lives could depend on whether they decide to act or not in terms of a change in the dugout. Let's remember that the remaining fixtures include the trip to Old Trafford, visit Liverpool, Leicester